впавши на коліно, своє полкове знамено, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Відвагу нашу, наші волі, загиблих друзів імена, читаю на шовковій молі я полкового знамена, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, браття у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 250 of the news, and of course, another night of fundraising for Ukrainian charity.
And of course, we're going to be reporting on the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine, and we also have some very massive news tonight. Two things, but first, let's cover the elephant in the room. It is Sunday again, and with it comes the next Sunday fundraiser. Of course, we have already gotten up to $1.2 thousand, and the goal tonight is $7,500. Now, I've already seen that the support is rolling in, and real quick, let's discuss who the nonprofit is for. So, tonight's fundraiser is for Razum for Ukraine. Razum for Ukraine is an incredible nonprofit organization that brings it brings Ukraine to the public's attention around the world, and not only that, but they help out a load of Ukrainian soldiers back on the home front. One of the best things that they do, and something that I appreciate heavily, is that they provide practically scholarships and sponsorships for Ukrainian soldiers in the armed forces for them to get some kind of education after the war, covered entirely by Razum. So let's say that at the beginning of the war they didn't have any skills. After their service in the Ukrainian armed forces, as long as they can prove it at Razum, they could go get training in a trade school, they could go to college, and with that education, they can go and get a well-paying job and provide for their families a token of everyone's appreciation for them fighting in this war and helping to keep Ukraine free and the Western world, as far as Eastern Europe is concerned, safe. And so now that we've covered the nonprofit, and I hope that y'all do support it tonight, of course, real quick to mention that this nonprofit is run through YouTube Give, which is a nonprofit kind of system that YouTube runs. You can pull it up online, actually. It's called YouTube Giving by Google for some reason, but on our platform, when we look at it on the dashboard, it's called YouTube Give. But you can see right here that they talk about what the fundraisers are about. 100% of your support goes directly to the nonprofit. We don't get involved in any of the handling of your support or donation, which is a better word for it. So if you send in, like for example, like Marc-Andre Brunette sent in $5 Canadian will be going directly to Razum for Ukraine once this fundraiser is over. And so it's an incredible system. I love it through and through. It's the only way we run fundraisers because, of course, it is foolproof. It's completely safe. And so for that reason, that is why we do this, because I don't want anyone to come in here and be like, do I trust the guy or not? You know, I want for anyone to be able to come on here, even if they are a first-time viewer, and support these fundraisers with the peace of mind knowing that they are safe. So with that, it is now time to talk about the biggest elephant in the room and this skull and crossbones marker in the location unknown segment. Believe it or not, but today, the Russians had the highest casualties reported in the history of this war over the past 24 hours. Unbelievably, they have lost almost 1,000 soldiers approximately over the past 24 hours. An unbelievable number. We don't know exactly why today was such a high casualty day. No new offensives were undertaken over the past 24 hours. We haven't seen the Ukrainian front lines move a lot in the past 24 hours. And so something large has happened that we don't really know about for certain that has led to this number getting almost all the way up to 1,000 Russian soldiers killed in a day. That means that around 2,000 additional Russian soldiers, or 3,000, were wounded and are most likely being sent back home due to their injuries. And so, with that in mind, if we do the math, a BTG consists of around 800 men. And so let's do, that would be at the high end 4,000 divided by 800. 5 entire battalion tactical groups were lost today due to just frontline attrition. 5 battalion tactical groups. That means in total, out of all, if you were to just sum up all of these casualties, both wounded and dead, and just compile them all into complete BTGs that were knocked out, that means that 5 BTGs are out of action, which means that 50 tanks are now no longer on the front line because they do not have crews, and a whole other, God, let me think about that, about 150 armored personnel carriers would no longer be operated because they simply do not have a BTG that they're attached to anymore. Those soldiers that would have been driving and operating these tanks and armored personnel carriers have been completely wiped out. And so it's an unbelievable thing. It's honestly impressive to see, and this will most likely go down as a very important day in the history of the Ukraine war, day 250, just because of the high casualty amount alone. This is most likely affecting Russian units across the entirety of the country, because losing 1,000 manpower in a single day for the military is disastrous, especially on a modern scale. This, in case of y'all don't know, is 2 times higher than the average that the British Army lost on average per day in the Second World War. Like, is that unbelievable or what, Matthew?
Sounds unbelievable to me.
It's honestly crazy, and we'll be looking for more news and information to see why these amounts of casualties were inflicted today of all days, but still an impressive one nonetheless. And you can see that the rest of the casualty report, pretty run-of-the-mill. The armored personnel carrier losses are high. The tank losses are somewhat average nowadays at this point in the war. About a dozen or so tanks are lost per day. So with that, that's the end of our casualty report, the massive news for the night. And now it's time for us to roll on out of our location unknowns for a second and move on into probably the most entertaining part of the news segment per night, which is the Russian and Belarusian news. And we're going to start in Belarusia because, oh buddy, do the Belarusians have us all out-teched. You know, Matthew, we remember looking at those cloaking panels on a CV-9120 in Sweden that were supposed to completely make a tank invisible. Remember that?
What? Yes.
So it would be pretty tough, hypothetically, to hit that tank with any kind of weaponry because it would just be hard to see off the bat, right?
I guess so.
So going off of these assumptions and dragging this on for way too long, suffice it to say, if you can't see a tank, well, the chances are that you most likely won't shoot at it. Well, but the Belarusians have decided, why go for the advanced technology? Why count on the Swedish to make that kind of tech up there in the middle of their Scandinavian paradise? Why not just make something that does the same job, but cheaper? And so, the Belarusians have come up with a brand new technology, the burning bucket. They say that Moses saw one of these after crossing the Red Sea. I'm kidding, that's a burning bush. This, on the other hand, is a monstrosity of technological advancements, all compressed into a small crap box with a small fire burning in it. The plan behind this rod with the bucket at the end of it is for a fire to be lit back here, and that fire will burn brightly. Really, if it's a wood fire, it'll probably burn around 400 to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the kind of wood, but it will be bright enough that, according to the Belarusians, and hot enough that a heat-seeking missile will go for the bucket instead of the massive burning hot engine bay that's right behind it. Very smart, guys, very smart. Also, we can see that the Belarusians haven't learned yet, because they haven't been involved in the war, that the cope cages don't really work, so they've gone overboard on cope cages to the point that the crew can't even escape the tank if it was hit. So what do you think about that, Matthew?
I don't know, Enforcer. I'm trying to keep it with the live chat.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. But anyways, gotta ask y'all, do y'all think that this is the epitome of modern technology? And I also saw a DMD20, nice name by the way, he said, this has to be a joke. It's not. It's not at all. Do you think that the Belarusian military would go through the effort, considering the mindset of Lukashenko, keep that in mind, who thinks that everything that's old world and old tech should work? Do you really think that they're kidding when they put a steel rod on a tank and we can visibly see that they didn't just set that fire for the stun? That fire's been burning on the back of that pipe so long that that pipe has turned black from the flame and the smoke, pretty much. So this is entirely something that they think will work. And that also gives you a lot of expectations for what the Belarusians expect to be doing in the future. They don't expect to be racing forwards into Ukraine. They expect to turn these things around and start driving them backwards and retreating, because there's no bucket like this on the front of the tank. Oh, no siree. It's only on the back when they would be running away. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Belarusian news. Of course, I believe that this will most likely be making it to foreign defense markets here in the near future, and it will be a bestseller. Moving on from that little bit of news and on into Russia, where we can see that things get even crazier. We can see that the Russian government is issuing more rifles these days, and they're about of the same quality as the garbage they were sending out at the very beginning of the partial mobilization. So let's take a look at these guns. You see them talking, chit-chatting, see them showing off the rifle, little rusty, little dinged up. And you see this one, oh my, look Matthew, they've come up with a new mode on the fire selector. It's called broken.
Wow, what about that?
Oh my lord. I don't know about y'all, everyone, because of course I haven't had a lot of experience with AKs. I've only shot one about twice or 3 times, but I don't think that's a fire mode. But I would check on that, but I'm fairly certain y'all don't have a lot of experience with this stuff, but I'm fairly sure that's a broken rifle.
Супер автоматом, бля. Пулеметом, нахуй.
Смотри, блядь, качество, нахуй. Качество.
Давай твой.
Смотри, блядь.
We see this guy over here holding it like it's a dead rat in a mouse trap. He doesn't even want to hold the AK. He's holding it by the straps.
Смотри, блядь, кал внутри. Чисто пиздец. Это надо охуеть, блядь.
А флажок тут на месте?
Флажок, вот он.
Oh my lord.
Аллах Акбар.
Look at this. This crap is atrocious, and they're sending people to fight in Ukraine with this stuff.
Ваше мнение. Замыч твое.
Я в ахуе.
Твое.
Без комментариев.
Ты...
Пиздец.
Смотри, блядь. Шарманка.
Now this guy's singing a song for you. He's coming up with a jingle for the broken AK.
Ну, хоть предохранитель работает. Не пиздато, конечно, но работает. Один из двух. Самое интересное, один из двух. Смотри. Бакелитовое цевье, деревянный прикол. Это чтоб тебе не скучно было, нахуй.
У тебя как комментарии?
Охуительно.
See, they're still joking around with it. I mean, see, this man, apparently this man has a craving for the gun grease, because now he's going to eat the gun grease off his fingers.
У тебя как
What in the
комментарии?
world?
Охуительно. Пизда.
Эй, блядь, мы всех победим, нахуй.
Задуло берешь и по лицу
Да,
противнику,
его
ебать.
страшно брать, смотри, ебать, ну ржавчины сколько. Я хуй как...
You now see him showing the front sight and also the flash suppressor. It looks like both of them are hardly on there. And with that, then seeing the video, but you gotta say, every time we go into Russia, things just get worse. They're almost hard to look at now. And to imagine that these soldiers are in a camp and they're about to be sent to Ukraine here soon, and they got these kinds of rifles, I think we can see why the casualty rates are getting so much higher now, and they were so high today. Once again, nearly 1,000 Russian soldiers were killed just today, and it may be because a lot of these are now conscripts that are hitting the front lines with these kinds of shoddy weapons, and so they're pretty much just being marched right onto a firing line to be shot at, which is kind of a little bit sad to think about, but at the same time, what in the world is the Russian government thinking when they're doing this kind of stuff? Like, I don't even know. Let me know, y'all. Of course, I always want to make sure, I don't want to say anything definitively sometimes, especially with things like this, because this would take a very experienced person with 20, 30 years in the field of operating AKs to tell me if this is an operational rifle, because I'm sure that some kind of AK buff is going to come crawling out of a hole somewhere and tell me that this is still a fireable AK, so I don't want to make any discernments right now, but I would have to say, in between you and me, I don't think these guns are usable. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, further down in Voronezh, where we can see that a Russian soldier was finally returned from captivity in Ukraine, and he said that the Ukrainians tortured them terribly. They were just doing all the terrible things, and when he was asked, they went through the list. They're like, well, did they beat you? He was like, no. Did they not feed you? No. Did they torture you? Like, just like rip your fingernails out? No, they didn't do that. What did they make you do? They made us sing songs. And here's him saying that right here. So here's the video.
Попал в плен в Вербовском районе Харьковской области. Ну, так морально, конечно, нас унижали. Ну, заставляли песни петь. Украинские, да. Ну, приходилось петь, деваться некуда было.
На украинском языке?
Да.
Ну, заставляли учить?
Да, учили.
Ну, это да.
He is terrified. Singing songs? Unacceptable. Torturing people, beating them? Yeah, that's fine. But making them sing songs? What in the, well, like, we need to get the Hague back up on this one. Someone needs to call the United Nations right now and let them know that the Ukrainians are forcing these guys to sing songs. That is the worst thing ever, because first it's songs. Next thing you know, they're going to be wearing Ukrainian traditional clothes, and then they're practically going to be Ukrainians, and that's unacceptable. And so with that, once again, pretty funny to see that the Russians are trying to make a mountain out of a molehill right there, because considering the Ukrainian prisoners that we've seen come back from Russian captivity and them having broken bones that set in place where they're just screwed up beyond belief, and soldiers that have almost been starved to death, beat to death, and similar things, and the evidence of that is incredibly clear. The Russians get a prisoner back, and the worst thing that they can report on that actually happened to them is that they sang songs. That's like the, if you put that on a list, that is like the least war crimey thing to do. That's not even a war crime, I believe. That's just demoralizing. I'm at a loss for words right here. I don't even know where to go with that. That's just the Russians just being goofy again and trying to make something out of nothing. And you can see how little they have to work with, considering that the worst thing is that they sing songs. With that, we're now going to be moving back out of Russia and Belarus and back into our location unknown news real quick to cover this, because we have some pretty interesting ones. First, we can see Ukrainian Mi-8 firing at some Russian targets. And over a reservoir. So we have a good idea where this was, but we don't know exactly where, so it did fall in the location unknowns. We can see the helicopter lifting up, and then firing off its unguided rockets. It's now popping off its flares, and going down low. You can also see the vortices created by the helicopter blades back there. And isn't that just, I don't know about y'all, I always find that really cool to see, because you can actually see how the air and is distorted by the helicopter's flight. It's really cool. You see they're flying quite low over that reservoir. When you see a second helicopter following behind, and then the video loops again. But once again, nice to see that the Ukrainian helicopter forces are continuing their assaults on the Russian forces, and it looks like they're having no problems continuing with a pretty high intensity of them from video evidence. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next clip, where we can see that Disney's copyright lawyers may become frontline soldiers incredibly soon. If y'all don't know, Disney has a show called The Mandalorian, which is apparently about some kind of a space guy who wears some kind of a specific helmet, and he's got a small version of Baby Yoda or something like that. Anyways, that is Disney-owned property, and this man is wearing a Mandalorian helmet on the front lines, and so I just heard that Disney is about to send over a foreign legion of their own to find this guy and give him cease and desist letters. But let's check him out in the meantime before he is captured by the attorneys, and let's see what he was doing. When you see them playing a game of rock, paper, scissors right there, let's look at that again. Rock, paper, scissors, most likely on who's going to be taking the next batch of Russian prisoners. You can now see him standing in front of the rocket. I think that's supposed to be like the firepower symbol thing. Once again, Mandalorian helmet, clearly visible. We can now see a close-up of the grad firing. And it looks like a slow motion as well. Isn't that neat? That is a really cool view right there of the MLRS firing. You now see him standing in front of it again, just trying to look cool for the camera. See the grad continuing to fire. That doesn't appear to be a normal grad, actually. That appears to be probably one of the foreign lended grads that's on a different chassis than the normal Ural that's used. But really interesting. See, we can see the rockets going flying off into the distance. We now see him standing again at another angle, once again in front of the grad. And with that, that's the end of the video. But once again, a really cool look at the Mandalorian. Apparently, the Mandalorian, until the Disney attorneys get to him, is with Ukraine. But we'll have to, of course, wait and see on that one. Because, much like Nintendo, Disney's got a very active group of attorneys that don't really like for people to infringe on their stuff. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians laughing at a captured Maxim. We have seen the Ukrainians using this before. Both sides have been using these quite extensively. But one thing that is always funny, and one thing you have to remember in context, is that the Ukrainians are a poorer nation, especially in Eastern Europe, and they never prided themselves on having the best military on Earth. However, the Russians did, and now we see that they, according to Russia, the second best military on Earth, has now been brought to the level of using Maxims as frontline machine guns. And so, here's the video of the Ukrainians laughing at that fact as well. We can see the Maxim. It's even got the little shield on it and everything. It's straight out of a museum. You see them playing around with the front of the barrel shroud.
Він якраз возраста, як цей Максимка. Ромка. Подаримо деду.
See them playing around the back. And you can also see that this thing was abandoned with a full, pretty much, belt in it. A full belt! They just left it there.
А де твої очки? Ладно.
So with that, that's the end of the video. But once again, I gotta say that if the scramble for Africa ever happens again, it looks like the Russians are well equipped for it. I mean, like, you know, if it was 130 years ago, but look on the bright side, everyone. At least we know that the Russians have been brought down to using guns that are so old that they could have been used in colonial wars 130 and 140 years ago. So I guess that's a plus. Also, the Ukrainians get a brand new machine gun to use in a static position, which is always a huge plus. But still, can anyone actually believe, is this serious? The Russians, and remember, the Russians always market their military to everyone, and it's represented in pop culture like this. Look, a T-90A. We're so modern, we're so advanced, we could take on the West any day. With our T-90As and our Su-57s, we've just got hundreds of these things. They're indestructible, the Russian army is unstoppable, and then they end up using a Maxim machine gun. Like, comedy writes itself. And in this instance, the comedy is just apparent. I hope y'all enjoy looking at this kind of stuff like I do. And also, it kind of makes me wince a little bit to think that museum pieces are being used in this war. They should be sitting behind a glass case, but somehow the Russians have decided that the glass case is too good for them, and they need to be put on the front. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of information, and we're now going to be moving on into the next bit, where we've seen another Ukrainian drone attack occur. And so, without further ado, here's this little clip as well of a nice little Ukrainian drone attack. And that is copyrighted into oblivion.
What kind of music was that, even?
That was AC/DC Thunderstruck. That's one song I know from the modern era. And I think that's because it was in an Iron Man movie that I watched when I was like 13. But when you see the bomblet fall, and when you see a Russian has now been awoken from his slumber by quite a loud and quite a shaky alarm clock, we now see another one on its way. Looks like it bounced off a tree limb and fell right behind him. I think he is now sleeping, and with that, that's the end of the video. And it's pretty interesting to see that the Ukrainians are still using drone bomblets wherever a sniper cannot get, and they are still quite effective, as a matter of fact. And it looks like, based off of what we've seen on the casualty reports, either those things are doing a lot of work or something else is. I don't know exactly what it is, but still pretty impressive nonetheless. Moving on into the next clip, we can see that a Russian commander decided, when things got a little rough, he hopped in the command vehicle and said, "Fight for the motherland, slava Russia," and all that crap as he drove away and just left everyone behind. It actually happened on film. It's the typical cowardly commander trope that you see in movies, where they're like, quick guys, go up there and get him, and then they go hide behind a table or something. So here's the video. We can hear some kind of music playing that they play on those commercials when you're trying to get some kind of a salsa, or what is it, like a salad dressing or something like that. No, let me think about it, Matthew. What is that? No, it's the most interesting man in the world music right there. You know, from the Heineken commercial.
Maybe?
The most interesting man in the world.
No, that's not it.
Well, I hope y'all get that picture. Anyways, we can see that the Russians are running down the road. They are wondering, where is their commander? We can see the command vehicle driving by them. Get out of the way, get out of the way. They start driving away, and now we can see the Russians turn tail, and they're following the command vehicle because their commander is inside of that thing and just leaving them behind. It looks like they're losing this race. It looks like the vehicle wins over manpower. I don't know about y'all, but isn't that sad or what? They're literally running behind the commander's vehicle like some kind of a dog that was left at a rest stop. Like, don't leave us! And he's just going for it. He's not coming back. He's not looking back. It's over for those Russians. They're now stuck in Ukraine without any clue of what's going on. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on to the next clip of Location Unknown News, and the last one we have, where we can see a Ukrainian soldier setting up a DM-22 mine. These things are incredibly interesting. They're German anti-tank mines that actually fire horizontally across the road. Usually when you think of an anti-tank mine, and I'll show you all the ones that we've seen so far in this war if I can find it, like this one, they're usually set inside the road and they explode vertically against the road. They explode upwards and into a vehicle. These mines, the German DM-22 mines, are actually firing horizontally across the road. Pretty much some kind of a piano wire is set up on the road, and if something drives through it, it activates this mine, which then fires directly into the side of the vehicle, destroying it. It's pretty effective. I mean, we've seen it in use a decent amount in this war, and we can see them setting up a new one right here.
Якийсь німецький птурс, блядь. Ну, короче, работав по нам сьогодні танчик, блядь, і Дімка рішив його заїбашить, блядь. Дімка. А тепер
joking around as they're setting it up.
Треба розібратися, курва, блядь.
У нас тут кришка вже.
Ні, ну я його взвів. Короче, знаємо, де танк. Примірні координати ми...
Дивись, береш на ручку і
та-та-та, блядь. Це пізда, блядь. Короче, це військові як малі діти, блядь. Да, бу-бу-бу, да. Що це за хуйня хуйоз? Ну, вроді як Турс, блядь, який-то, блядь. Німецький ще, блядь.
And with that, that's the end of the video, but it's nice to see that the German-provided DM-22 mines are doing quite a decent job in Ukraine. We didn't get to see that on this film. We've seen it weeks prior. And that the Ukrainians still have enough of them that they're still using them to this day. Of course, always love to see. Hopefully see this one in action sometime soon, if you know what I mean. Hopefully we'll get a video of it. And so with that, that's the end of that Location Unknown News. And we're now going to start moving further down the line and towards the direction of Svatove, where we saw some VABs, some French-provided VABs on the move, and quite a decent amount of them. But before we get to that, I've seen that Matthew has thrown up an incredibly interesting poll about the orcs using the certain guns that we've already seen tonight, like the Maxim. And so with that, Matthew, could we hear the polls? Because it looks like some really interesting ones have been thrown up, and loads of people have voted on them.
Yes, indeed, and we do have two polls to go over, and the first one says, are you baffled that Russia is using historic guns like the Maxim? It looks like 59% said no, it's orcs, to be expected. 34% said yes, I can't even believe it, and 7% said I don't know. So I would have to fall within the I can't believe it category, because the orcs are incompetent, but that is baffling to see they're using museum-style guns on the battlefield. I almost can't believe it. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say, I honestly am really surprised to see that they've gotten that far back in time, because there's a couple of levels until you get to that point. So first off, you have, I guess you could say, what's the Russian machine gun that they're using right now, the PKM machine gun, which we can see right here. This is what we've seen, or it's a PK, I call it a PKM. this is usually what they've been using in the war in Ukraine so far, and I guess you could call it a late Cold War era machine gun. They've also been using some other ones, I forgot the exact names of them, but as far as standard issue goes, this is a standard issue machine gun. After you go from that machine gun, you go to the next one, which is the DP-28. We've seen the Ukrainians using a decent amount of these, but we haven't seen the Russians using a lot of them. These are, I guess, what you could call the closest thing that Soviets in the Second World War would have had to a modern light machine gun. It's very comparable to something like, I guess you could say, the Bren gun in terms of its size and mobility, but it does have some very distinct differences. Of course, Bren and a DP-28 aren't exactly the same thing. And then, finally, the last one I guess you could say you have on the list is the Maxim gun, which is the oldest of all of them. This thing went into service in 1886, which gives you an idea of how old it really is. It was so old that this thing could have served in the Russo-Japanese War. And that's unbelievable to think that literally a historic weapon that is that old. It's so old that in the United States, this machine gun doesn't even qualify as a firearm. That's how old it is. And to think that they're using them in Ukraine, and they were sitting there and calling themselves the second best military in the world, it's honestly insane to me that that's really the case. I would think that they would have gone to the DP-28 first. So honestly, although this is the smaller group of people who voted on that one, I am shocked to see that. I thought they would go for...
And aren't Maxim guns kind of hard to come by?
Well, in the West they are, but in a country like Russia, which was a former Soviet country, and they never got rid of anything, they're actually quite easy to get in former Soviet countries like Ukraine and Russia. But it's still crazy to see them using it, because think about this. This would be like America, like the U.S. Army, whipping out something like the Gatling gun in the invasion of Iraq because we were running out of weapons. Like, think about that, because this is about the same time frame. The Maxim gun started to come around about 20 years after the Gatling gun went into service. That's how old that gun is. And when you put it into context like that, I think a lot of y'all may, if y'all haven't already, can get the idea of how old and how truly archaic it is for a quote-unquote second-best army, a second-rate army in the world, to have to start using these things because they've lost so much of their modern equipment. And they've now gone to the Western equivalent of the Gatling gun. And so with that, I hope that, well, I guess a better example would be like the British during Afghanistan whipping out a Vickers machine gun, which is very similar. And I mean, like, almost, really, they're just identical, nearly. The only difference is that the receiver on this one is about 2/3 the height of a Maxim, because Vickers went and took the Maxim design and improved upon it heavily and reduced, I guess you could say, the weight and the size and the clinkiness of the internal parts inside the machine gun, and so they were able to make the receiver a little bit smaller. But beyond that, they're practically identical. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And it's unbelievably crazy. And also, just in case if some of y'all are wondering, what do you mean this is not qualified as a firearm in the United States? Well, believe it or not, if a gun was made before the year 1898 or 1899, in the US, it's legally not considered a firearm anymore. It's considered a collectible antique. So you could, legally... A criminal, this is going to sound kind of weird, a criminal who has a record in the United States and legally could not buy a firearm could buy one of these because it was made before 1899. So it doesn't even fall under the Firearms Act of 1985, which banned people from buying machine guns without a tax stamp beyond that year's make and model. So
wouldn't the criminal have to be very rich though? Because aren't these like $20,000 or $30,000 in the U.S.?
Oh, they're like $100,000. You'd have to be
man.
you'd have to be someone who committed like a white collar crime to buy one of these things and have like a hedge fund in an overseas bank. But it can happen. That's the craziest part. Someone just said 98. Thank you. It is 1898. I actually have well, no, that one's actually not one. Although I was going to say I have a Krag Jorgensen, mine was made in 1902, so it didn't qualify. Just almost though. But it's the 1898 pattern. So technically it could by the pattern, but by the I guess you could say year of its production, it didn't qualify, sadly. But still, really weird how U.S. laws work in that regard, because this is clearly a machine gun, but for some reason US law says it's not. So with that, we're going to be moving on into the next poll if we have one, and if not, we are going to answer a couple of questions from the live chat because we have no super chats tonight, and we're also going to address how far the fundraiser's gotten and also recognize all of our largest donors who've helped this fundraiser to get to where it is tonight. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we do have one more poll to go, and this poll said, do you think the rifle is usable? And it's referring to that rifle in the earlier video that we watched. It looks like 57% said no, it won't. 24% said I don't know, and 20% said yes, it will work. Now, I would have to say I doubt it's going to work. I didn't get to take a close look at it. I was so tied up in the live chat, but from the glimpse I got, I would say no. But Enforcer, what do you think again?
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. If you have an AK, we can go back to that video and watch it again real quick, just real quickly though. If we go back to that AK and we take a look at that thing, no way it's going to work. So real quick, let's get to the part where he flips the fire selector, or I guess you could call it the safety. That is inoperable. Because there's only 3 modes on a real AK. There's safe, which you can see it in the safe position before he flicks it down, which you can hardly see. Let me see if I can show that to you. Right there, when it's covering over that opening right there on the AK, that is considered safe. That is the position where the safety's on. If you flick it 1 down, I believe that puts it into either semi-auto or auto. And then if you flick it 1 down below that, it's either semi-auto or auto again. I forgot which one's which. I think it's the first notch down that's auto, and then it's the 3rd notch down that's semi-auto. Correct me in the live chat if I'm wrong, but that is what I think is the fire selector modes for the AK from top to bottom. Still, that's not a mode. That thing's just broken, and so it's not usable. That thing is certainly broken. If they tried to fire it, it'd most likely blow up in their faces. And so with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. I see some people, though, are like, yeah, it will still work. Y'all put too much faith in the pressed metal gun like this that's made for like $50 in the sweatshop.
Yeah, so, just put some WD-40 on it.
Yeah, just put some WD-40 on that thing because the Russians, they know how to make a quality gun, man. Like, like the Mosin gun.
I'll have y'all know, I bought a Mosin gun. It was the first gun I ever got, and it was because it was super cheap. And I got it, I fired it, and the stupid thing just sucks. Like, if it gets too hot, the bolt won't work. Like, it's just the weirdest thing ever, and I don't know how in the world that even works mechanically. Like, I'm sure it's something to do with swelling of the cartridge inside the bolt and all that crap, but for a gun to sit there, a gun that was supposed to be used by the military at one point in the Soviet Union, and for it to pretty much break because you're using it, that doesn't make any sense. I don't have a lot of faith in Russia.
Is that the one you were hitting with the hammer at the range that one time?
Yes. Just to tell you all that story real quick, we went to a gun range, and Matthew had an AR, and I had a Mosin gun, because, that was my gun. So I went up there to shoot it. I shot 3 rounds out of it, and it jammed. Like, it just jammed. The bolt wouldn't open. And if you know anything about bolt actions, that's pretty hard-pressed to jam a bolt-action rifle. They're known for practically being unjammable. So I was like, oh crap. So I sat there and I used all of my force to try and open that bolt. It wouldn't open. I had to call over a range officer. He had to go get like a Phillips hammer out of his truck. And we sat there and literally beat the bolt open to just get the cartridge out of the freaking chamber. It was unbelievable. These things suck. Everything that the Soviets ever made sucks. And I don't know why people think different, because if you ever look through Soviet history, they were trying to cut corners on their quotas everywhere, so everything was poor quality, but, it is what it is. So I hope y'all enjoyed that funny little story.
I just remember that sight. I was over there, like, shooting at the range, and then all of a sudden I look to the left, and there's the Enforcer and the Range Master with a hammer, hunched over the gun, hitting it as hard as they can with a hammer. I'm like, what the hell is going on over there? I'm just going to go back to shooting.
Oh, man, everyone was at the range shooting. Meanwhile, me and the range officer over there acting like it's a blacksmithing session, trying to, like, beat some tempered metal into form. But with that, we are going to be moving on from that poll. I hope we addressed that one fairly well. I hope y'all enjoyed that funny little story, too. And let's hear about how far this fundraiser's gotten, because it looks like in the course of about 50 minutes, we are halfway there. That's a song. We can't sing it. I think we might get copyrighted. But with that, take it away, Matthew.
All right, so we are currently sitting at $3.2 thousand of our goal, which tonight is $7.5 thousand. So we're almost halfway there, still making really good progress. And also, Enforcer, we do have quite a few top donors when you're ready for me to call those off.
Yes, let's hear them and let's recognize everyone who's helped the fundraiser get this far tonight.
All right, and we do have quite a few, so as always, please bear with me. I'm going to try not to sound like an auctioneer. Up first, we have a $100 donation from James Riaz. We also have another one from Malachite. We also have one from the Enforcer, and for some reason, YouTube got it messed up tonight, and it went through as anonymous. We also have one from BC Skyman, Plant Lady, Ryan Whitehouse, Rust and Rot. We also have several $50 donations. We have the first one from Junebug72. The next one is from, let's see here, Bubba Hotep. We also have one from Robert Harrington, Bob P, Super Bunker 9000, Avari Mandubratis, and I think I got that right tonight, Richard Bell, Sean Tiz, Axel K, Anti-Defs, Jan Andrews, Sapper AJ, Douglas Scott, Dad Good, and finally, Greg Carrier. And thank you all very much for your generosity tonight. I'm over here like stumbling like crazy over my words, but thank you so much. And Enforcer, would you like to add a few words yourself?
Yes, I would. I would love to thank everyone who's gotten this fundraiser to this point tonight. Of course, Razom for Ukraine helps out soldiers in a great way and a great deal, and they also help out a lot in many other projects that they do around all of Ukraine. And that support goes directly to Razom to help them to continue on their projects and to help the Ukrainians to focus their efforts on things like fighting the war. And so I thank everyone so much who sent in some support to Razom for Ukraine, and I highly encourage, of course, that y'all support Razom. It's a great fundraiser. Of course, all of that support goes to help out Ukrainians, and it keeps them going. Of course, it's not, when you put it in the big picture, $7.5 thousand is a drop in the bucket, but still $7.5 thousand from a channel like ours and hundreds of channels across YouTube equals up to loads. It could equal up to millions, and that does help out in great ways. Of course, real quick, some of y'all may have seen earlier tonight that it looks like I didn't throw in a donation, and funnily enough, the new YouTube interface screwed me over. Y'all may have seen an anonymous donation come in for $100. That was me, because YouTube didn't give me an option tonight to pick whether I wanted to show my name or not, because the new interface on my phone didn't give me that option, and I thought it would automatically do it, and then it didn't. So thanks, YouTube, for really screwing me over on that one. But I did, of course, always throw in my $100, and I hope that y'all try and match that, if anything. You know, that's pretty high, though. So, you know, any support matters. But I did make sure to support it tonight, and I hope y'all do as well. And so with that, Matthew, let's hear a couple of questions.
All right, and first up,
wait,
to...
Real quick, I forgot. Everyone's saying Phillips Hammer. What the hell is that? Phillips Hammer does exist. This, from what I remember, it was like a multi-tool hammer that had like screwdrivers in the handle. That's a Phillips Hammer. So I know that they usually make like screwdrivers and stuff, but I swear the guy said it was a Phillips Hammer and it had like screwdrivers and crap in the handle. It was really weird. I've never
heard of a Phillips Hammer before. That's a new one on me.
Yeah, and I know why we haven't heard about it, because it's like $144 for this hammer, but they do exist. So with that, I hope that does address the comment like that fairly well. You know, this is not a leaf spring thing. I swear the guy called it a Phillips Hammer, and that just threw me for a loop like all of y'all. And so with that, hopefully that's not another leaf spring moment, and we are now going to hear some questions.
All right, and moving back to that one I was just talking about a minute ago, we do have the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Cfay, Mark Hodges, and also Draconian, who figured out the Morse code. They say it says the highest day for Russians in casualties, and they are still, quote-unquote, winning.
And y'all did get it correct, and that was the message for the night. And it's always funny to me that regardless of how many casualties they take in the Russian army getting blown away, they always go at the end of the day, we're still just holding back. We could win at any moment if we want. It's like, why not do it now? I mean, like, you know, don't you think that's enough? But anyways, congratulations and thanks to all of our Morse code deciphers. So it sounded like we had a lot of them tonight, like 3 or 4 of them, who helped to decipher this Morse code. Of course, I hope y'all been having fun with that, and I hope y'all keep on having fun with that as well. It's something I like to do. I like to put the Morse code in there, and I love that y'all also like to decode it nightly as well. And so with that, on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Franz Wingard, who says, what does the naval presence of NATO look like in the Black Sea?
from what I know, the naval presence isn't that large. I believe the only navies that would be present there are the Romanian Navy, the Bulgarian Navy, and maybe the Turkish Navy, depending on where their bases are and what's based in which ones. I don't really know about the U.S. Navy. They could be there. Submarines could be in the Black Sea. That's not unlikely, but we don't really know if there are any Western, I guess you could say Western key nations like the United States, Britain, or France that have made it into the Black Sea. As far as we know, it's only the countries that are a member of NATO bordering the Black Sea that would have some kind of a naval presence there. But once again, take that one with a grain of salt, because I could be wrong, and really anyone could be wrong, because there could be a U.S. submarine in the Black Sea, and of course we never know where those are. It's very rare for us to ever get any kind of reports on their location. And so with that, I hope that answers the question to the best of our abilities, but keep in mind that that information is very hard to track, because a submarine at sea is impossible to really tell where it is. And so with that, we are on to the final question, and then we're going to be returning to the news.
All right, and this one goes to Avari Mandubratis, who says, do you think the USA could offer to flag merchant ships ferrying food exports from Ukraine as a deterrent against Russian attacks? What's the feasibility and likelihood of success?
And can you reread that one more time, because I think I misunderstood the first part.
Yes. Do you think the USA could offer to flag merchant ships ferrying food exports from Ukraine as a deterrent against Russian attacks? What's the feasibility and likelihood of success?
That is a great question. I had to make sure to hear that one a second time so that way I could try and think of an answer to that. Because, of course, that is starting to enter diplomatic and, I guess you could say, international law that I'm not really that well versed in. But if a vessel was flying an American flag, that probably would... I don't know, because I feel like it would give it some protections, but at the same time, I feel like if they just decided, oh, let me fly a U.S. flag, I feel like that wouldn't, because the ship is actually registered and based out of a nation like, you know, like, for example, like your normal one, like Guatemala, it wouldn't really be a U.S. ship, even if it was hit while flying a U.S. flag. Of course, that's something that could be ironed out with the United States. Maybe they could say that any ship flying a U.S. flag has American protection in the Black Sea, but at the same time, would they? Would that even be... Well, then again, it doesn't really matter whether it's legal. It just matters if we enforce it or not. I just don't really know the answer to that, though, because there's a lot of, I guess you could say, gray area, a lot of difficult stuff that would have to be covered there to really get a straight answer on whether that's possible or not. But my original inclination is that that wouldn't work, because if the Russians struck a ship that was not American or American registered and it was flying a U.S. flag, then the nation that ship was registered in would really be the one responsible for its security. So with that, I hope that answers the question to the best of my abilities. I don't know a lot about international maritime law or how any of that stuff would work, so I might be correct on that. I might be incorrect. Just keep that in mind. So with that, we are now moving out of this question segment, and we're now moving back to the front lines, where we can see how the casualties that the Russians took today happened in some places. Starting off in Svatove, where we saw some French-provided VABs on the move. And I gotta say, these things are fabulous. I hope y'all see what I did there. You hear them playing some kind of a music. We see them looking around, showing the Ukrainian flag flying on top of this VAB, and another one behind them. Now see him throwing up a peace sign. And showing off the flag again as they continue driving down the road. And that's the end of the video. But once again, pretty interesting to see that the Ukrainians, of course, got VABs provided to them from the French, and that the Ukrainians are using them quite well out there. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of news, south of Svatove. We haven't gotten any frontline movements or changes in this area north of Svatove or on Svatove itself, and so for now that front line does appear to be unchanged. However, when we get down to Kreminna, we can see the action did pick up here, starting off with some destroyed Russian vehicles. Also, rolling S at victory signs, probably a victory sign, honestly. V for victory. But anyways, moving on to this. You can see an abandoned BMD. Requires some repair. We hear someone just throttling their motorcycle in the background. Turret, of course, the top of the tank just melted inside of the tank, and so the turret just fell into the middle of the tank's hull. So that's not normal, just in case if anyone was wondering. We now see another one, a BMP-2 sitting out in the field that looks nice and toasted.
Ребята, еще одна красивая, сгоревшая.
See him walking around this little BMP-2, and it just looks cooked. I don't know about you guys, but if this was a restaurant and they asked you how would you like your BMP done, they would call that well done.
Еще одна, которая здесь сгорела.
We now see another one. Once again, cooked well done.
Стреляла, но больше стрелять не буде.
And so that's the end of the video, but I gotta say, the Ukrainians are pretty bad cooks. They just cook everything well done when it comes to the Russians. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this little clip of news and further south in Crimea, where we can see some more destroyed Russian armored vehicles. We see another one. This appears to have been a BMP. We don't know if it was a BMP 1 or a 2, because everything but the rear doors has been blown off.
А второй кусок вылетел на другую сторону.
Now see him looking across the field at what appears to be maybe another destroyed vehicle, but we can't really tell. And so with that's the end of the video. And if the Ukrainians ever want to use these things, don't know if they want to or not, you know, because it may require a little bit of tender loving care, but I always heard, and I have seen that it's true, that if you get a knife on a piece of burnt like toast or maybe a BMP, and you just scrape it along the side, you usually can get the rust, or I guess you could say the burn off of the toast or the BMP in this case. I'm sure that that's a scalable idea, though. I'm sure you can take a knife and scrape the rust right off of this BMP like you would a piece of toast. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the Crimea area, but it does look like the Ukrainians inflicted a decent amount of casualties on Russian forces there. However, in Belarusian, we have seen that the Russians have started levying a large amount of artillery against the Ukrainians, who are still holding the line, and we can see that the Ukrainians, of course, kept themselves fairly composed in this video. We hear the artillery coming down, and the soldier is trying to recover at this very moment. It's now getting down into a basement, which serves as a bomb shelter in these times.
Я 300.
See them kind of standing in the stairwell. This man's trying to catch his breath. Can't really doubt him for it.
Втримувати населений пункт Білогорівка для нас було дуже важливо. Адже це перше село, яке звільнили на Луганщині Сили оборони України. Для нацгвардійців останні 10 днів були дуже важкими, адже тривали запеклі бої з...
What's this man, a beaver? I'm just kidding around. But look, he just eats the tape.
10 днів були дуже важкими,
He's hungry.
адже тривали запеклі бої з регулярними російськими військами та вагнерівцями. На жаль...
We see a Max Pro out there. Nice, nice.
Nice.
Ніхто не здав зброю, ніхто не здався. І тримали і будуть тримати рубіж до кінця. Слава Україні!
Now we can see the footage continues of the soldier wandering around Belarusian. We can see how much damage has been caused by the artillery over the past month. And so with that's the end of the video, and it's nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to keep their cool under the fire, and it looks like they are holding down the Belarusian area quite well. Moving on further south, and once again towards Verkno-Kamyanka, because everyone knows that if you get news in this area, it always comes in pairs. So you get one bit of news in Belarusian and one in Verkno-Kamyanka. And when you see down in the Verkno-Kamyanka area, it's looking like the Somme. And so they say, and it didn't have this earlier in the caption, that this could be in the Bakhmut area. So I guess it is a bit of a stretch. You could call this the Bakhmut region. We might want to, actually I am going to readjust that marker because earlier it said the northeastern front, which this would be about the general area that we were supposing. So we're going to move this down towards Bakhmut. And I guess that moves us directly into the Bakhmut news as well. But here's the video showing the, I guess you could say, frontline conditions of what it looks like out there near Bakhmut. Also, got to stop the dubstep throat singing. But we can see that the artillery is coming around and the soldiers giving us a view of what it looks like outside of his trenches. And it's absolutely desolate. It looks like the Somme. Quite some rough frontline conditions. You see a soldier running back to the trench, and it's crazy to think that it almost looks like this kind of smoky haze is just over the battlefield nearly permanently at this point until the war ends. And we saw this in a video similar to this one a while ago, about 3 weeks ago. With that, we're now going to be moving further down the front lines to the area of Soledar, where we saw that a Russian tank got destroyed. We can hear, of course, the normal music, where they go, Večno Ukraini, and then it gets hit. So, when you see the T-80BV driving down the road, the commander outside of his hatch as the engine burns up behind him. And now it looks like they're trying to emit a smoke screen. I think the engine was already doing that beforehand without much help. And we now see that they've abandoned the tank, it appears. And now, a little while later, the tank is turned into a nice charbroiled flame. It's got some whitish, darkish black smoke. So both of those are the smokes of death. The white is ammunition, the black is the internal parts of the vehicle burning up. And it looks like it may have had a turret toss. We see something that looks like a turret further up the road, now burning upside down. With that, that's the end of the video, but huge credit to the Ukrainian unit that was able to catch that T-80BV on fire, and then we just saw the Russians like, you know what, screw it, Vladimir, we're leaving. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the area of Pokrovsk, where we also saw the Russians under fire here as well. And of course, huge credit to the Fighting 93rd that was able to hit these Russians crawling along this tree line. Here we can see the... Oh, crap, screw it. That's not even going. That was a bad start. We're going to forget that one. We can see the Russians crawling, and the artillery hits them dead on and takes out a decent amount of them. And this may be one of the reasons why the casualty rates were so high today. Exact hits like that probably took out everyone there. And so that may be why today is the highest lost day in the Russian Armed Forces history as far as this war is concerned. Moving on further to the other side, the south side of the front line near Bakhmut, we saw that the Ukrainians also came under fire today, but in much more favorable conditions, and they handled it a lot better. Here's the video. And also, I have to check this one real quick, so let me pull this one off screen just to make sure. So... Alright, this one does appear to be okay, but you can see that the Ukrainians did come under fire as well. It's been quite an intense time over the past 2 months in the Bakhmut area, and the Ukrainians, of course, are outgunned by the Russians in terms of artillery, so this kind of stuff does occur quite normally.
Huh?
You hear the Ukrainian soldiers
Брат,
talking on the
брат, я
radio.
таран, зараз відходимо.
Отходим, передайте. Отходим, мужики. Десь там орієнтир озера, нам треба туди уходить. Їх забираємо. Мужики, виходимо, відходимо назад.
You now see the Ukrainian forces moving forward. We hear a round come in behind them and explode. The soldier hit the ground immediately. Someone was hit, and for that reason, I'm going to pause the video here because while it seems to be okay, I don't want to show that, of course, out of respect to that soldier as well. But they did take a hit, but I can say this. If y'all would like to watch the rest of this video, go down to the link in the description below that says Day 250 map, click on that, go click on this exact marker on the map, and y'all should be able to watch this video in its entirety. The Ukrainians did act professional the entire time. It appears that they never got overloaded with stress, and they made sure to keep their cool, but still it does show the risks, and this is something that I always want to point out, the risks involved that the Ukrainians deal with daily to keep this war going, and that is the reason why we are running the fundraiser tonight for Razom. Razom is helping out these soldiers after the war to make sure that their lives are secure, and to give them some kind of token of appreciation for all that they may have sacrificed and all that they went through to make sure to protect the Western world and also protect Ukraine as well. And so, once again, I highly encourage that everyone does support Razom for Ukraine tonight. It's a great fundraiser, and of course, without y'all support, we can't keep reaching the goals. And of course, I thank everyone so much who has supported the fundraiser, and hopefully it can reach its goal tonight of $7,500. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip in the Bakhmut area. We cannot show that one any longer, but we can show here some older footage. It just came out today, showing that the Ukrainian artillery was hitting that asphalt plant that was retaken by the Ukrainian Special Police about a day or two ago. And so, here's the video. We can see the Ukrainian artillery landing nearby and hitting the Russian forces quite well. We can see some kind of flares being fired off somewhere in the distance. It looks like a jet, perhaps. Can't really tell for certain. We now see more artillery hitting what appears to be some kind of a compound. It may be the asphalt plant itself, but it's really hard to tell due to the amount of damage it's taken. We can see some Russians taking naps. We can see some Russians running around. And we can see the Ukrainian artillery does not discriminate, and it's going to get them all. We're not sure whose soldiers these are, probably Russian, considering that the artillery just hit them.
Now, my question is, why would they want to take a concrete plant?
Probably because that's concrete, baby.
What?
They probably took the asphalt plant because it was a defensible position, but then after the Ukrainians started to push them out of the defensible position, it wasn't really ideal. But we can see that they are now landing some mortar fire on the surrounding fortifications outside the asphalt plant. We can now see the Russians dragging off some of those who've decided to take a nap. And also we can get the look at the longest straight line Russian trench in history. They are digging for an oil line right there. That's not even an infantry trench. That's like for sewage or something. Like, the Russians blow me away every single day. It really is unbelievable to see this kind of incompetence on literally a massive scale. That goes on all the way till the end of the frame. And that's probably about a half-mile in length. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. But once again, it's good to see that the Ukrainians were inflicting some good damage on the Russian forces in that area, and were able to push them back a little bit. It appears that from what I've seen in the live chat today, some people are saying that this is why the Russians took on a massive amount of casualties, is that they tried a new push. Artillery was already pre-aimed into the area where that push was occurring, and so they just ended up obliterating a large amount of the Russian forces, and that's why the casualty rate was so high today and close to 1,000. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Bakhmut news and further south into our Donetsk, Mariupol, Southern Front, and Kherson news. But before we do all that and also show this very cool video in Plavrahad of these Ukrainian Su-24s on the move, a massive formation of them, I have seen that we have raised a decent amount more on the fundraiser. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
Right. Before we go over the fundraiser numbers, I want to quickly go over the poll that we put up a long time ago. And the question was, have you ever heard of a Phillips hammer? A very interesting question with an interesting result. It looks like 18% said yes, it's common knowledge. 33% said, not really, but maybe. And 48% said no, no such thing, LOL. But I have seen many people in the live chat say that they found it on Walmart's website for $150. So apparently it does exist. But it's kind of out of date from what I've heard. But Forster, what do you think?
Well, it is something, when I said it, I was like, I'm sure that's going to get a lot of backlash of Phillips hammer. Because, it's like, when in the world does Phillips make a hammer? But they do. At least that's what the guy said. And I just took his word for it. I was like, Phillips hammer. I was like, that's kind of weird. But still, I hope that it addresses that poll really well, because I, too, did not know about Phillips hammers until that guy said he had one. And so with that, we are on to the next poll if we have one, and if not, let's hear how far the fundraiser's gotten tonight.
Right, and to think that Oats Air has put in a $50 donation, which took us up to $3.9 thousand on the fundraiser, so we're getting very close to $4,000, and our goal tonight is $7.5 thousand. So still making really good progress, and our top 3 donors at the moment are Justin Baitup, who puts in a $50 donation, as well as George A. and Oats Air, who I already called out. But thank you very much to all 3 of you for the very, very generous support tonight. And also, thank you to everyone else for donating even smaller amounts, because as always, it helps to add up to reach our goal. So Enforcer, what say you?
And of course, I thank everyone so much who's putting in support to these fundraisers. It helps out a lot. It goes to a great cause. And of course, it helps out Ukraine in the end. And any amount of support for Ukraine is good support by me. That's the entire reason why we promote Sundays more so really than any other day, because today is the day that we send support to Ukraine through fundraisers. It means a lot to me. I'm sure it means a lot to y'all. And
Oats put in another
100, getting
and
us
we're
to
at
$4,000. So now we only have $3,500 to go to reach the $7,500 goal. Can we do it? Because I know one thing. The Lee Spring Army has never missed a goal. We've never missed a single fundraising goal. I know we can do it. We will probably be calling a general order again later on the night just to get us that final ways over the top. But once again, I highly encourage everyone to support Razom for Ukraine. They're an incredible nonprofit that does great things to help out Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian citizens, and also make sure that it stays on the public's mind, much like this channel tries to do as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Oats Air, for that support to the fundraiser. And with that, oh my lord, Meltdown Man with $1,000 just threw us right up to 5,000. Right
Did you
there.
see the progress bar like jump up all the way?
It just jumped up a massive amount. Good lord. And so let's see. All right, so let me say this. If anyone wants to top the top donor tonight for the fundraiser, it is $1,000. Can anyone else throw in $1,000? We got Anonymous with 20 Canadian. And, honestly, Matthew, I really, it really aggravates me. I'm just going to say this real quick because I got to get this off my chest. It really aggravates me that tonight my $100 was put in as anonymous. It usually gives me an option to either put down my name or not. Oh my lord, Paul Fitzgerald with $500. You know what, Matthew? You know what? I'm 1 second. Hang on. I've got to make sure. Let me check this real quick. Oh my god, you've got to be kidding me. Hang on, everyone. I'm getting on my phone, and when I click the show my name along with my donation amount in live chat, it doesn't check the box. It just sits there. This is annoying. Hang on, everyone. I want to see why in the world this is happening. So give me just a second. But of course, thank you to both Paul Fitzgerald and our freaking man Meltdown Man, who threw in just $1,500 combined, bringing the fundraiser up to $5.7 thousand, which means that we are about $1,800 away from reaching the fundraiser goal. I mean, and John Galt with 100, man.
Also, Indy Andy 4C with a 50 too.
So real quick, y'all, let me see if it'll work. Yes, okay. So real quick, I gotta do this because this is an honor system thing, and it feels cheap to say, oh, it got marked as anonymous. I'm going to send in another 100. This time it's going to be this is going to happen right now, actually, because we are within that range. We are calling up General Order number 5. If you have $5 to send it in right now. I'll be sending in another $100 donation to tonight's fundraiser. Already sent in one before, but it was marked as anonymous. I don't like that. So if I have to, just for the principle of it, just so that way y'all know that I did throw in $100, I will throw in a second one. But right now, General Order number 5 has been activated. If you have $5 to put into this fundraiser, put it in now, so that way we can blow over $7,500 here in just a second. So real quick, let me throw mine in to start this off. This time it ought to work. Let me put that in. And there we go. It should be popping up right there, and General Order number 5 is in effect. We are now at $5.9 thousand. Will General Order number 5 get us to 7.5? I would like to see. And so with that, it is now time for us to answer a couple of questions while General Order number 5 does its job.
Right. So answering our first question from the live chat, and also if y'all have a question, please @Enforcer Matt and send it to me, and I'll add it to the spreadsheet. But up first, we have one from Happy Dragon who says, Enforcer and Matt, how would you calculate that Ukraine is having half as many casualties as Russia, more or less?
I would have to say that there is no real way to calculate, just being entirely honest. We are going off of general approximation based off of the last time there was a casualty report put out on the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians don't put out many of them, and we haven't gotten one over the past 6 months. So we're assuming that the Ukrainians also, it would line up in a way because they've largely been the defending force through the majority of this war. They would be taking about a third of the casualties as an attacking force would, and then there's an additional amount that's pretty much added on because the Ukrainians have a decent amount of training over the Russians and also have been doing some pretty much landfall amounts of gains, both in knocking out the Russian armed forces and among other things. So for that reason, that's why we're assuming that the casualty rate is about 1/4 to 1/5 of the Russians, but once again, there isn't really any surefire information on that. And while we've been talking, General Order number 5 has gotten us almost $900 in super chats that have pretty much consisted of nothing but $5 donations. That shows y'all the power of the General Order. That is really impressive. And I wonder if we can get General Order number 5 to get us the rest of the way there.
I think so, because we're only $1,000 away. Actually, only $900 away now.
We're only $900 away from the $7,500 goal. And I really wonder, can we reach that in the next 20 minutes? Because I would be blown away if we can. If anything, we can. I know we can. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into the next question. I hope I answered that one fairly well. Oh my lord! Oh,
Granny's 2 cents
through 500 Canadian, getting us up to $7,000. Good lord!
Dang.
All right,
7,000.
And so with that, we are on to the next question.
All right, and the next question is from Justin Nourse, who says, are we going to see a line drawn in the sand with Iran with their participation with Russia and Ukraine? How much more involved do they have to get before there's a military response?
I honestly could not really answer that question. I believe I would have to declare ignorance on it for the most part, and also, it's really hard to tell with foreign countries what it will take for them to get drawn in. And if I'm hearing this question correctly, Matthew, it was Iran that was going to be drawn in?
Yes.
Specifically for Iran, it would be quite difficult because they would have to airlift everything of theirs over, most likely, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, and then into Russia, or transported by sea over the Caspian Sea, which there's a YouTube channel called Caspian Report, which is kind of funny. But anyways, it would be a little bit logistically challenging for them to get involved in the war, and also there is no reason for them to get directly involved. Wars wreck economies, and so usually most countries... Oh my lord! Oh,
What
it's
happened?
air! It threw in $300, which just put us over the goal! Let's go! We've done it. We've now reached $7.6 thousand. We've reached tonight's fundraising goal, and so my job here is done. Good night, everyone. I'm just playing. We're going to round out the news. But still, impressive to see. And I thank everyone so much once again in the Lee Spring Army for helping us to reach that goal again, the 30-second fundraiser, and once again, hitting the goals. It's always great to know that the Lee Spring Army is incredibly kind and generous to Ukraine, and that these fundraisers are always able to succeed each and every time. We are still working in the background on the plan to get the $100,000 fundraiser in motion. Hopefully that will start to come into effect soon, because I think it would be impressive for our channel and everyone here in the Lee Spring Army to be able to say that we were a part of something that was massive, monumental in scale. Definitely in terms of support to Ukraine, which I think would be fantastic. I don't know about y'all, but I think it's a cool idea. And so with that, we are now going to be...
Enforcer.
Huh?
Guess what the LSA gets as a reward for reaching the goal tonight?
What?
They get a video tomorrow.
Hey! And of course, we have a video coming out tomorrow. Now, I will have to be honest with y'all. The second video, the one made by me, that is kind of up in the air right now because I was supposed to start making that on Tuesday, and life has been so busy for me in the background that I have not even had time to sit down and start working on it. So it's kind of a question whether that one will come out tomorrow. We are going to probably be busting butt to see if we can get it done before the premiere tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. But Matthew's video is scheduled to premiere at 10 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. I thought the last one was a great one, and I think this one will be pretty good as well. And so with that...
yes. And it is taking so much longer to edit than the last one. I have to say, I've already spent 8 hours on it. I've probably got maybe about 5 more hours to go tomorrow, but it will be ready. I have no doubt about that. And I think it's going to be a really good one. It's about a 7-minute long video this time, so a little bit more in depth than the last one.
And I gotta say, I think it will be pretty good. I mean, I've seen a little bit of it already. It looks pretty freaking good. And so, also, can we give the general genre it's in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Spies. It's about spies and espionage. So, I bet y'all enjoy that a pretty good bit.
Assassination, too.
Yeah, you know, it's a certain kind of assassination. But anyways, with that, we are going to be getting on to the rest of the night. Pretty much the rest of the night's going... Well, actually, we need to answer one last question before we move on. So what's that last question?
All right, so the last question of this segment. Also, big shout out to... let's see here. Actually, I cannot pronounce that because I think it's in Ukrainian. But I'm going to put it in the live chat real quick. Big thanks to that viewer for putting in a $50 donation to the fundraiser, and that got us up to 7.7 thousand on that fundraiser. So we are above goal now and still going very strong. So thank you very much for the generosity on that.
So his name is Marcus Nashkis, Slava Ukraini. So that's his name, and thank you so much for the support and the $50 super chat. It means a lot to have people donate to these fundraisers because, of course, it is what this channel pretty much started off doing. The first chance we got to run a fundraiser, we did, and every single Sunday since, we've always run fundraisers. It means a lot to us to be able to continue to raise the support for Ukraine. It's pretty much an identifying part of what the Lee Spring Army is, and I thank you so much for everyone contributing in that tonight and getting us to this fundraising goal. And so with that, on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be going through the last bits of news for the night.
All right, and this one goes to Serve, who says, given the lack of production from Russian troops as a whole, do you believe that the Russian military has the means to produce any type of formidable offensive, outclassed in all phases?
I don't think they have the ability to launch offensives anymore just because they just lack the technology and also the equipment to really carry one off well. At this point, they're working with technology that at the best is from the 80s. And that's really a stretch. Most of it's really from the 70s and the 60s. And they're being put up against technology that came out in the early 2000s and the late 90s. Or even later than that. The Stuxnet came out in 2016. And so you can kind of get the idea that there's a massive technological gap by decades there in between the technology the Russians are using and the Ukrainians, and on top of that, the Russians can hardly supply the technology from the 60s, so it is a really big question as to whether that's possible or not, and the real answer is that it's not. There's just no way that they can actually do that, and also based off of their supply line situation in the background, and considering that they can hardly supply any of their troops, that also hinders an offensive altogether because the soldiers wouldn't be able to make it beyond the points they're at right now. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well, and it's now time for us to cover the remainder of the news for the night. Starting off in Pavlograd, where we saw a massive formation of Ukrainian Su-24s in the sky, 4 of them in total. And so I'm just going to let y'all hear the sound and see the sight of 4 Ukrainian Su-24s on the move. Pretty impressive.
Dang.
That is really cool to see. And so with that, that's seeing that little clip, but I wanted to show y'all a little bit of Ukraine's air power. I believe that's about 1/3 of their Su-24 force in one place, which is really impressive to see and quite rare, especially during wartime. With that, we're now going to be moving into the Donetsk region, where we saw today that there was a little bit of a tank battle that occurred in Donetsk. And so, here's a tank battle that was filmed on the Fun. Also, we gotta mute the dubstep. We now see the tank firing. We now see it passing another one and firing again. When you see the artillery landing as this tank continues to fire. Tank continues to fire. This was labeled as a tank battle, but I'm not really seeing a lot of tanks and a lot of battles going on here. It just looks like a tank firing into the distance. We now see the tank on the move. We can now see another one firing in the distance. And with that, that's the end of the video. And it's interesting to see a tank that appeared to be Russian with some kind of camo net on it. That's incredibly rare. Usually they don't even put effort into trying to get some kind of a multi-tone camo on their tanks. So all in all, a very interesting video. Moving on into the next one, down in Avdiivka, we saw that a sniper was shooting at a Ukrainian soldier. And I gotta say, y'all, it looks pretty rough. I gotta say. But I gotta show this to y'all because I gotta show you what the Ukrainians deal with every day. You see the Ukrainian soldier getting out in the open. I mean, you see here that the sniper is looking at him. Looks like the soldier's placing down a sandbag. The sniper fires and misses. He misses. Like, what, like, you know,
Dang! Enforcer, did you see that
oh
in the
my
live chat?
lord!
Anonymous?
Anonymous with 1,000. Just got us up to $8.8 thousand. Oh my
Who might
lord!
it be?
We are, wow, this is impressive. This is impressive. And so with that, I thank you so much to the anonymous viewer. We do not know who you are. Hopefully YouTube didn't screw you over like I did. Well, like it did me earlier tonight. I'm stuttering my way through that because it marked me down as anonymous and I didn't want to be anonymous. So hopefully it didn't do that to you, but whoever you were, whoever that anonymous donor was, thank you so much for supporting this fundraiser. It is helping out a load of Ukrainian soldiers in making sure that their lives and their families are secure after this war is over. And so with that, let's go back here after giving out that huge shout out and thanks to such an impressive amount of support. And let's watch this again. The Ukrainian soldier's looking around. The sniper fires. And you can see that the round flew right over him and hit the sandbags in front of him. This kind of incompetence is just silly. If this is a Ukrainian sniper, this guy was still for quite a while. He was in the same spot for like 10 seconds. That's long enough to hit a shot. Russian snipers, which are supposed to be the best marksmen in the military, can't even hit a stationary target. Lame. But the Ukrainian, of course, was smart and had some incredibly fast reflexes. As soon as the shot flew over him, he immediately went climbing right back into the sand, I guess you could say the sandbag emplacement, and hit immediately, as you can see right here. Like, his reflexes were lightning fast.
Добиваем. Попали, братан. Попали в лопатку.
So now they're just standing by and just sitting around, twiddling their thumbs after they just failed at their only job. A sniper only has one job,
Нет.
and it's to hit a target. And the Russians are so bad at their jobs in the military that a sniper can't even do the only job they have to.
Да. Одного заебенили. Смотрим все, огневую точку ищем.
And so that's the end of the video. I'm seeing that some people say that he did get hit. Let me pull that off screen real quick just to see. So real quick, I'm watching this again. Okay, I see what y'all are saying. He did get hit, but I'm watching it again, and it was... Let me see it again.
Yes.
It looks like, if anything, it was a grazing shot. Because it looks like it hit right on the edge of his arm, which you could hardly see the first time. It looked like it completely missed him. But it looks like it may have just skimmed right beside him and gave him something of a flesh wound right on the very edge of the outside side of his upper arm. So, with that, that's the end of that video. Once again, though, you would think, considering that the range off of that camera looked like it was somewhat close, just a few hundred yards, that a sniper, that they're trained their entire career in the military to hit a target, you would think that, like a Ukrainian sniper, they would be quite accurate, but even then, even with them looking like they may have hit the soldier, it was still a grazing wound, and I'm sure that he'll probably recover from it because, wounds on the limbs, for the most part, are usually recoverable from. Chest wounds are another thing. But with that, we're now going to be moving out of the Donetsk region and down into Mariupol, where we have a pretty sad sight to show. Things have not improved in the city of Mariupol at all. In fact, it looks like things are getting even worse, and the conditions have gotten far more terrible. We can see here that a group of people in Mariupol are having to cook on some kind of an open makeshift stove in the middle of a stairwell because they don't have any room to, well, any ability to cook anywhere else. There's no chance for them to do that. And while they're cooking, there's a fire raging in the apartment building next door. When you see that right over there. And the living conditions are appalling. They may as well still be living in the middle of the siege of Mariupol with what it looks like. And so with that, that's the end of that video, but once again, it keeps in mind what the Russians truly treat the quote-unquote liberated Ukrainians like. They don't treat them like they're even people. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of the city of Mariupol, and we're now going to be moving further up and onto the front lines near Vasilivka, where today we saw that the Omega unit, an anti-terrorism unit, was destroying some Russian forces. And an anonymous donor just threw in $500, getting us up to $9.4 thousand.
And also, Rad Doctor put in a 50.
And thank you to Rad Doctor and the anonymous donor for getting us a whole $550 further towards 10K. We only had a goal of $7.5 thousand tonight, and we've already gotten $2,000 above that. And I'm sure the Lee Spring Army will get us all the way up to $10,000 before the end of the night, which is just impressive to see. And so with that, here is the special anti-terrorism unit Omega hitting some... Wait, hang on, let me make sure I read this quick. Yeah, it's of the National Guard destroying a Russian BMP. When you see the BMP breaking out across the field, moving around, it looks like it's not really a great condition BMP. We now see it towing a BTR, and when you see it destroy one of the BMPs, they had a really interesting clip right there. Some turret tosses, some more destruction, more vehicles on fire, more vehicles burning. The Omega group is really delivering some damage, and it's nice to see that they're doing that. And so that's the end of that video. But while they were conducting a pretty decent amount of damage to the Russians in the southern front, we haven't gotten any news of frontline changes. However, in Kherson, we have gotten a load of news showing that things may be kicking off here once again, or the Ukrainians are just keeping up a decent level of activity. First, we have a pretty lengthy video, which we will have to shorten a little bit. It's 9 minutes long. And so we'll want to try and keep that a little bit short, considering that the news is going on quite a length tonight. But we got to see some Russians. Actually, this is the wrong video. It's the next video, I believe. But these Russians are trying to retreat while they're under artillery fire. And so here's the video.
Так, на ПТС, где? Бегом, Иваныч! Забирай! Что, ты тоже там танк? Ваш на танк тоже ходит. Да? Да.
Это я не понял, там нихуя не...
Давайте, пацаны, ваши на танке тоже уезжают. Да, блядь!
Где костер?
We see them loading up onto the BTRs and also inside of the trucks as well.
Давай. Где костер, блядь? Все, нормально, братан, все? А? Нормально? Я не слышу! Брат, я не слышу, у меня контузия. Я понял.
We hear an artillery round land right near them.
Нахуй, блядь! Держи, рюкзак! Быстрее! Костер, давай быстрее, блядь! Быстрее давай, костер! Блядь!
You know, I love how the rounds just landed like 50 yards from them, Matthew, and they're still like slowly walking around.
Yeah, they're not moving very fast.
You know, it's like the artillery round lands nearby, and they're like, "Oh crap! Okay, I guess I gotta leave. Oh man!" And they're just still kind of walking around all slow and crap. It's like, I mean, at this point, I would imagine I'd be so freaked out I'd be running. But these guys were just like, "Oh man, okay, I guess we're gonna leave now." They kind of zeroed in the artillery on us. Oh man. Now you see them yelling to move faster. They're still moving in a little bit of a waddle. You see them yelling for the driver to stop, but the driver's so freaked out. Now see that they finally are on the move.
He lost a hat.
Oh man, look at this guy. Look at this dude. He had a baseball cap.
I see everybody saying that the end of this video is funny, so I'm waiting to see what's going to happen.
I wonder, is it the baseball cap? It's got to be better than that. Oh crap! Oh my god!
Oh my god! Oh my god.
Tony can't drive.
Man,
What
you
the
know a couple of them
hell?
got crushed.
Oh my god. Well, they didn't get crushed. They just kind of got rolled over. But you got to remember, Matthew, you know, YouTube censors are a thing. So we got to, you know, say it a certain way. But oh my god, that is...
Oh,
my
man.
god, that is horrendous. I mean... Was he yelling for Tony? Let's listen to that. Oh my lord.
How do you like... How did he run off the road? It was literally a straight road.
It was literally a straight road. We can go back and look at it. He's driving a straight line here. Okay, he starts veering off here. What is this guy, an idiot? Does he not know what a straight road is? he just does a hard left, and then he just does a hard right after that. Oh my lord. What an idiot. This is
how could he not save it?
I don't even know, because all it would take is just a slight adjustment to save it at that point. Instead, he just goes for another hard right, and he just finishes everyone on top of the tank. They survive the artillery, but they aren't surviving Tony's driving. Tony's driving kills. And so with that, I guess if they all drive another BTR, I don't even know if any of them will be around for that, they're not going to let Tony drive. And so with that, that's the end of that video, and that one was insane. I actually saw someone in the live chat say, didn't we see this one yesterday? And I swear, I promise y'all, we've never seen that one before. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip, where we can see that the Russian SPG was destroyed. Got to mute that audio, but we can see the SPG right down there. It looks like it may be a 2S1. And now it's a 2S none. We now see that the SPG is on fire and burning quite well. You see the SPG continuing to burn. It looks like it's mostly an ammunition fire that's burning down this tank. And with that, that's the end of the video. And oh my god, oh my lord, Tony is still on my mind. I can't believe Tony just screwed everyone over like that. That was an unbelievable video. And so with that, that's the end of this clip. Once again, nice to see that the Ukrainians are destroying more Russian artillery. But I think, I gotta be honest with you, Matthew, and this is not even trying to make a joke here. I think Tony may have attributed a decent dozen to the casualty report of today with that stupid move, because that looks like it could have ended up doing some damage.
So, and probably Tony's going to get a, let's say, some punishment after that.
Oh, that's if anyone's around to even give him punishment. I mean, like, hell, if they tell him to drive to the base to receive his punishment, no one will survive Tony driving up.
No, I mean, like field punishment.
Oh, well, I mean, like, hell, that's if anyone's okay. I mean, like, everyone was riding on top of that tank. You know, you got to think, oh, well, not the tank, the APC. You got to think, did any of them even cognizant anymore or awake to be able to dish out punishment, because they might not be. So with that, we're going to be moving on to the next clip, but I gotta say, damn, Tony really messed up. We're going to be moving on to the next one where you can see an uncut video. This is quite a long one, so we'll have to cut it a little short, but this shows a Russian retreat. I believe we have seen this video before, but this is now the longest version that we have ever seen, and so we're going to be showing everything that we haven't seen before.
Что, какая движуха вообще? На наших выходило, нет? Он сказал, внимательно слушать все приказы. Блять, этот КамАЗ, он пиздец, заебал нас.
You see the armored car further down the road. We now see a KAMAZ passing by.
Где костер? Костер где?
I like how everybody sounds like the Charlie Brown teacher on the phone.
Wait a minute. Oh, I just got deja vu, Matthew. This is the Tony video.
Really?
This is the longer version of the Tony video, because that truck just pulled up in the exact same spot. We are in Groundhog Day, y'all. This is the unedited cut of Tony. We're going to skip forward real quick and see where this video cuts off. Does it? Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Oh, no, it cuts off at the same point. Wait a minute, it doesn't. There's a little bit to the ending.
Got some more.
We're going to skip forward to the ending here. So you see another Russian vehicle pass by at 90 miles an hour. So it seems we didn't really get to see a lot more. I was hoping we would see the road, but it's still. I think Tony just messed everyone up. So with that, that's the end of that video. Once again, we're not going to show the whole one on this because it's just really a longer take of Tony. But Tony messed up. Let's just watch this one more time because this right here is just this is golden, not for what it is, but for showing how incompetent the Russians are, is that they can screw up driving down a straight road. This looks like a Tiger armored car. Is it? Let's rewind real quick, man, because I gotta check that real quick. Oh crap! Wait a minute. No, it's like a BTR. Hang on, let me go back and look at that again. No, it's an armored car. I just realized, Matthew. Oh my god, this adds a whole lot more to this. Tony isn't a stupid driver. The guys on the truck are stupid. They're sitting in front of his windshield. Right there, they're all sitting in front of his line of sight. He can't even see where he's driving.
How's he seeing it all then? Is he looking like out the window?
He's not. It's a miracle of God that Tony even drove that far. He can't even see. Oh my god. Dude, I didn't realize that the first time we saw this.
Let's just be real. These guys weren't going to make it much longer anyways.
No, they weren't. But now this isn't that unfortunate. Now this is just pure stupidity because Tony didn't tell these idiots, "Hey, I can't even see you to drive. Y'all need to get off the hood and sit somewhere else or go find another ride." He just let them on the front and he just took off and he can't even see where he's going. Tony is
off the charts.
Tony is off the rails. He was trying to. He was too ambitious. He was like Icarus. He flew too close to the sun, and they tasted the light of the sun. Like, this man is on the windshield. His ass is on the windshield. On the driver's side. Wait a minute. No. That would be the passenger side. So Tony can see a little, but these guys right here are blocking his line of sight. Oh my god. Oh my god, Matthew, it clicked. They didn't start veering off the road until the hat flew off. Tony got distracted because he was looking at that guy, and he got distracted by the hat. And so I guess he looked behind them as they were driving, and he just started veering off the road, and that's what caused everything.
Dang. Let's watch that again. The expression on their faces, like that one guy sitting there on the windshield, they all have like no clue like how much danger they're in. They're just clueless.
It's unbelievable. I mean, like this whole entire video is insane. But let's watch that again because he's largely driving straight at this point. He is veering a little bit to the right, but he starts veering to the right a little bit more after the hat goes flying off. And then that's when all hell breaks loose. Oh man, I can't stand that sound where it sounds like a bowling ball hitting some pins. I mean, like that sounds horrendous. But with that, that's the end of that video, and I think we've got it all down now. Tony couldn't even see, and the hat was what took him overboard. It was just sensory overload at that point, and then everything went downhill from there. And so with that,
I think they might have been better off if once the truck started squirreling, that they might have maybe ditched the truck, maybe like jumped off. That might have like saved some of them.
Maybe. I mean, I don't even know at this point. That whole entire video is just a cluster, just a real screw up. And so with that, we're now going to be moving down the front line and into the next clip, where we see more artillery hitting the Russians. Also, we have to mute this, but you see the Russian supply truck right there, and you can see the Russian supply truck gone. With that, that's the end of the video. But of course, credit to the 14th Brigade. That actually says, if y'all believe this, y'all, I can actually read Ukrainian a little bit. This says brigada, which means brigade. I'm very smart. And so with that, that's the end of the video. But huge credit to the 14th Brigade, which conducted that strike on that artillery truck. Well, not the artillery, the supply truck. Sometimes getting my words mixed up tonight. But anyways, moving on to the next bit, we can see in Petrove that the Foreign Legion captured some equipment.
Привет, Украине. Короче...
We can hear them playing some kind of 1940s advertisement music. We can see that one of them called a peasant's cart, which is always good. Russians always need their peasants' carts, of course, to make sure that they can carry around their pension. So we can then see after that more captured tanks in the distance. We can see a T-80 out there. And right over beside that, we can see another T-80 BV that was captured, a bicycle.
That's a pretty modern looking bike.
That is. They got that thing from Walmart.
I like how this guy's just like so nonchalant and joyful about the whole situation.
Yeah, and if you listen to the music, like it's pretty funny. That's the music. I can't play it all because it's probably copyrighted, but they're just hanging out around all the captured tanks, just enjoying it, having a good time. A Sunken Grave said Tony was telling all the other guys all the different kinds of shrimp. There's shrimp gumbo, shrimp. And then they just go off the road. See this guy showing off a little box of something and his rifle as they continue to wander around these tanks. This Russian tank, surprisingly enough, has a tricolor camo, which is really rare. You never see that. And with that,
what's that guy wearing on his head?
He's wearing like the British do that a lot. It's some kind of a camouflage netting. The British, I believe, they use mostly like these large fabric strips, but it really does break up the shape of your helmet. It makes it look like something of a bush.
Wow, just for your helmet only, and that's it?
You can get it on other stuff. I think you can get it on the vest as well. But mostly it's only put on the helmets from what I've seen.
Huh.
And you know, I guess that's just because maybe your head's poking up over something, so it's better for it to look like a bush. And the rest of your body doesn't really matter at that point. It's just probably behind some kind of cover. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a smart idea when you think about that. Also resource efficient, but I'm not really sure if that's the reason why sometimes the rest of that camo stuff is not put on the rest of the uniform. Also, some people are saying ghillie hat. I'm pretty sure that that's some kind of a cover for a helmet. Ghillie helmet cover. So let's see here. We can find some images of these kinds of ghillie helmets. So we see some here with this one's just literally just shredded fabric on top of fabric, which is actually not that bad. It kind of does its job. Moving on down, I remember a British one that was like these large fabric strips. Maybe that was just something that they made in the field? No, here it is. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. It looks like that.
Oh.
And also you can see that this one's being sold in Britain because it's 16 pounds and 75 pence. And so with that...
Being sold by Cadet Direct.
Cadet Direct. Mr. Cadet Direct. That's a good name, actually, for a company. Anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on into the next clip from Marathon, and I believe this is our final clip of Frontline news for the night, where we can see a UR-77 meteorite clearing a minefield. Also, I have to mute that, but we can see the meteorite firing off its charge into the air. We can also see some kind of a Ukrainian tank with a plow on it. We can now see the charge has laid itself down in the field. They'll detonate it here in a second. I believe after they tighten up the wire, I believe that's usually what they do, and that's what that meteorite's doing right there. And now we can see that they're about to explode the line right there, which clears a path through the field that will be free of mines that vehicles and infantry can use to cross. We now see the Ukrainian tank that had the plow on it already taking advantage of the opening. They're going to use it immediately. And so with that, That's the end of the video, but it's very nice to see that the meteorite is being used in action by the Ukrainians for things other than committing war crimes, and that they're using them, unlike the Russians, to clear fields of actual mines. With that, we're now going to be moving all the way up to Kyiv, because believe it or not, after this impressive night of a fundraiser, which we will once again cover after the speech, and all of this impressive news, and good news for the Ukrainians, we have finally reached the end of the news for tonight's stream. And so without further ado, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 250 of the war. Real quick, let me get this up here, and let me put it up to full audio, and also put the subtitles there, and here is the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Провів сьогодні засідання Ставки Верховного Головнокомандувача, а вже 27 за час від початку повномасштабного вторгнення Росії. Розглянули ключові оборонні питання, наші активні дії на передовій, подальше звільнення територій від окупації, постачання боєприпасів і техніки, ремонт техніки, інше забезпечення сил оборони, а також підготовка до зими. Звичайно, розглянули і ті плани, які мають російські військові. Доповідали головнокомандувач, керівник розвідки, командувачі оперативних напрямків, міністр. Щоденно і без жодних перерв працюємо, щоб пришвидшити відновлення територіальної цілісності нашої держави. І завжди на ставці ми відзначаємо успіхи наших воїнів, той результат, який забезпечується по звільненню української землі. Щоразу маємо приводи порадіти разом з усіма українцями. За підсумками цього тижня я хочу відзначити воїнів 54-ї окремої механізованої бригади імені гетьмана Івана Мазепи, 5-го окремого штурмового полку і 10-ї окремої гірсько-штурмової бригади за хоробрість і стійкість при утриманні рубежів на Сіверському напрямку, а також бійців 25-ї окремої повітряно-десантної Січеславської бригади за рішучість при звільненні нашої території, за особливу енергійність. Дякую вам, воїни. На відміну проявили себе воїни-прикордонники Чопського загону, які зараз у складі Сил оборони України захищають нашу державу на Донеччині. Сьогодні вони зупинили жорсткі штурмові дії ворога, російську атаку відбито, до того ж зуміли поповнити наш обмінний фонд. Дякую, хлопці. Мають результат і повітряні сили. Є сьогодні збитий російський ударний гвинтокрил і збитий російський військовий літак Су-25. Російські терористи продовжили обстріли на різних напрямках. Чернігівщина, Харківщина, Донбас, Дніпропетровщина, Запоріжжя і область, Миколаїв і область. Відповідаємо окупантам. Відчутно відповідаємо. Загалом по країні протягом дня не було аварійних відключень. Вдалося відновити технічну можливість постачання енергії після тих російських ударів, що відбувалося протягом тижня, але дефіцит генерації все ще зберігається, тому вкрай бережливе споживання електрики і стабілізаційні обмеження мають продовжуватись. І, будь ласка, у темний час доби будьте особливо уважні на дорогах. Було вже багато звернень, зокрема від Національної поліції, щодо необхідності для пішоходів мати на одязі світловідбиваючі елементи. Це дуже важливо і для дітей, і для дорослих. Але не менш важливо, щоб сумлінне ставлення було і у водіїв. Зараз варто не просто дотримуватись швидкісного режиму, а й додатково зменшувати швидкість, і особливо у тих місцях, де є нерегульовані пішохідні переходи. Будь ласка, дбайте про безпеку інших. І, до речі, хочу сьогодні привітати усіх українських автомобілістів, не тільки цивільних, але й військових, з Днем автомобіліста і дорожника. Зазвичай вам бажають гарної дороги, а я знаю, що ця наша з вами дорога, хоч і не легка, але точно веде до нашої спільної перемоги. Вітаю! В порту Чорноморськ вже завантажено чергове судно, яке зафрахтовано продовольчою програмою ООН. Це «Балкер», на борту якого 40 тисяч тонн пшениці для Ефіопії, країни, що переживає надзвичайно болісну ситуацію з їжею. Ефіопія на межі голоду, це проблема не тільки про зростання цін на продукти, а про фізичну нестачу їжі. Ми готові випустити це судно в море, як і всі інші, що вийшли з портів Великої Одеси за час роботи експортної зернової ініціативи. Але і цей балкер з пшеницею для продовольчої програми ООН і інші судна з агропродукцією змушені чекати, бо Росія шантажує світ голодом. Що світ почув? Що нібито хтось із зерновоза запускає дрони. Спочатку вони говорили про бойових птахів, потім про бойових комах, тепер бойове зерно. Пшениця вбивця, від якої тонуть російські адмірали. Ну що можна сказати? Реально хворі люди. Але ці хворі люди знову ставлять світ на межу жорсткої продовольчої кризи. Росія єдиний винуватець того, що продукти харчування зараз будуть дорожчати для різних людей на величезному просторі від Західної Африки до Східної Азії. Росія – це причина, чому люди, зокрема в Ефіопії, Ємені чи Сомалі, залишаються із катастрофічним дефіцитом продовольства. Звичайно, партнери намагаються переконати державу-терориста трохи збавити оберти в шантажі. Але чи реалістично це? Поки що факти вказують на те, що керівництво Росії більш зацікавлене у загостренні продовольчої кризи, ніж у виконанні підписаних документів. І це, до речі, відповідь усім тим, хто каже про переговори з Росією. Зерновий коридор – це дуже конкретний приклад. Там зараз 218 доказів, що Росія не хоче ніяких справжніх угод. 218 суден, які очікують можливості вести продовольство за експортними контрактами або зайти в українські порти. Тиждень за тижнем Росія гальмувала зерновий коридор, попри свої ж обіцянки партнерам, і тепер заблокувала його повністю. Україна зі свого боку зробить все, щоб експортна зернова ініціатива працювала і надалі. Я дякую усім, хто допомагає нашій державі. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто воює і працює заради нашої перемоги. Я дякую усім, хто у цих обставинах проявляє турботу про інших. Слава Україні!
Well, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that wraps out tonight's news segment of the war in Ukraine here on day 250. We had a lot of interesting news to cover today, from Tony to the 1,000 that have been taken out today in this war on the Russian side. It has been quite a night, and I gotta say, I hope y'all enjoyed it as much as I did in terms of the news, and also how far this fundraiser got. Of course, we laid out a goal of $7,500 tonight. And somehow, the Lee Spring Army took that and went $2,500 higher. And thanks to that anonymous donor, we have now reached $9,900, and we are less than $100 away from reaching $10,000. I thank each and every one of y'all in the Lee Spring Army who have helped us to get to this point. Of course, General Order Number 5 helped out a large load, along with a lot of massive donors tonight, which helped us to get to this point. All of that support goes to Razom for Ukraine, which helps out Ukrainian soldiers in making sure that their lives will be secure after this war, and so will that. Thank you to everyone so much once again. And also Misk77, who just threw $100 and got us $10,000! Let's go! That is impressive, and thank you so much.
And also, big shout out to Tangen for also putting in 100.
And real quick, man, actually, let's get some shout outs for every donor who's put in support tonight.
And that's it. It's just Tangen.
Really?
That's it.
That's it? We haven't had more people?
That's it. Tangen.
Well, still, I mean, like, even if it is just Tangen, I thank you so much, Tangen, for the support. And also, thank you to everyone who got us all the way up to $10,000 tonight. Once again, another fundraiser goal met, and even then some, and a lot more support to help out Ukrainian soldiers. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on from that, why am I having such a hard time with words tonight? We're going to be moving on from the fundraiser, and we're now going to be moving on into the polls and addressing those. And so with that, what do we got, man? Because I've seen that some of them have been on our boy Tony.
All right, so the one on our boy Tony will wait just a second. The first poll that I put up said, if a non-nuclear country is threatened with nukes, should NATO provide umbrella protection? This was inspired by a question that I got in the live chat, a very good one. It looks like 57% said yes, we should protect that country, 35% said it depends, and 9% said no, we aren't responsible for all. Now for me, I think we should defend the country, whether or not it's NATO or not. Obviously, we're obligated to protect NATO members, but we should also go and to protect other countries, because once nukes start flying, it's really hard to put that genie back in the bottle. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say, while NATO is only a defensive alliance, I believe, like you say, we should expand outwards and make sure to protect nations within our sphere of interest, which is Ukraine, and also several other countries at that. There are some countries that are not in defensive alliances, but it's in our interest to protect. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, shout out to Cerner Vikinger for putting in a $50 donation to the fundraiser. Thank you very much for that. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 something dollars, but I can't see it for some reason.
Real quick, actually, I can pull up the stream on a second tab and watch it on YouTube, and that should give me a good idea of how far we've really made it along. So, one second. You would think, y'all, that YouTube would give us those kinds of numbers, the
Shout
exact
out to
numbers.
Cerner.
Let me mute that real quick. That's probably trippy for both Mandy and me. $10,100. Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. 100, 100, laughing face, smiling face. And thank you to everyone tonight who's made that possible. And of course, Cerner Viking is the last one to have sent in a donation of $50. And so thank you everyone so much once again. And let's get on into the next poll, which it looks like it's about Tony.
And it is. The question is it Tony's fault that the truck crashed? Let's see. It looks like 60% said yes, bad Tony. 19% said maybe, but I can't tell. And 21% said no, he couldn't control it. Now, here's the thing about Tony. Tony's got to share a little blame because that truck went really bad out of control and the save was horrific. Now, that big fella on the windshield might have blocked him a little bit, but I think Tony has to share a little bit. So I'm going to have to say bad Tony.
Tony, you got to drive the truck, Tony. I mean, like, hell, Tony. That's such a New Yorker name, honestly. Like, how in the world did that guy end up being named Tony in Russia? You know, that's like an Italian thing. You know, like I don't even get that. Like, where in the hell? Like, someone in Russia, you know, oh, Vasily, Ivan, we got Dragonov, we got Vladimir, we got Vladislav. I would like to name him Tony, please. What? Yes, I want to name him Tony. Okay, it's Tony. That's like, who in the world went with that? Who in the world in Russia was like, oh yes, I'm going to name my son Tony? You know, that's just so bizarre. Like,
although isn't Tony short for Anthony?
Yeah, I think so. But well, Anthony. So I guess it does work in Russian. But still, I mean, it's still weird to hear that in foreign language as someone being called Tony. But anyway.
Oh, and also Bright Eyes said it could be short for Anton.
Oh yeah, that's
true. Or Anton.
That's true. Okay. I'm gonna eat my foot on that one. It's not too weird for him to be called
Ew.
Tony. But
eat your foot.
But Maple Leaf Spring, Matthew, he's right. Tony's got connections with the mob, but not the right kind of mob. He's got connections with the Russian mob. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were gonna try and pull off a gangster accent with me.
Oh no, that'd be cringy for me.
Oh, well, it probably is for me too. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well because I gotta agree, Tony, you gotta drive the car. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
Anthony Knoll said, "You're killing my name." But anyways, we have our next live chat question, which is from Happy Dragon, who says, Enforcer, is there any news at all about the children stolen/taken to Russia from Mariupol?
Sadly, from what we know, there isn't. They kind of just disappear into Russia, and we never hear from them again, sadly. So unfortunately, that's all I have to work with right now. And so, I hate to not answer that question because it's a question that I would like to have an answer to, but it doesn't really look like anyone has a real answer for it. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Heath Reunion, or something like that. I'm sorry, Heath. But Heath says, did you guys see the Ukrainian playing the Ukrainian national anthem on bagpipes? Jake Bro had it on today's video. Who's Jake Bro?
I don't really know who Jake Bro is. I'll try and look into that channel. But I do thank you for throwing in that question, and I will try and check it out. I do play the bagpipes as well, so that is really cool to hear. And maybe at some point I can try and record it on bagpipes, although I don't know how that will work because, you know, right now we are in a place where we really won't be able to play bagpipes unless we were to wake up the entire, place. But still, is a pretty interesting idea. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And also, like a train said, forget about it. And so with that, on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a question from Charmander, who says, Enforcer, generally speaking, wounded are about double losses. If Russia can't provide simple resources to mobilize troops, what are happening to the wounded Russians' troops?
Can you read that one again real quick?
Generally speaking, wounded are double losses. If Russia can't provide simple resources to the mobilized troops, what are happening to the wounded Russian troops?
The wounded Russian troops are probably getting some kind of a minimal treatment once they get back into Russia. So I really don't know. I mean, like, we've seen them in hospital before, and it looks like they really get no treatment. They just get a bed and they kind of sit in it until something improves about them, and then they get thrown out. So with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, because one thing I do have to say is that much like North Korea, it's kind of a black hole on Russia and what really happens in there. Like, we don't really get clear answers to most stuff. And so with that, real quick, actually, everyone, because I was, much like North Korea, I just said that. One thing y'all may not know is that we actually know exactly where North Korea makes their enriched uranium. Which is really funny, because you would think we wouldn't have that kind of information, yet we do. So let me find the small town of Pyeongsan. And as we scroll in here, you're going to see this little town. It looks terrible from the sky. It just looks like straight up poverty. But one thing that's really interesting, Matthew, is that if we go down here to the southern hills of Pyeongsan, you'll see this very odd-looking green water and this yellow stuff flowing into it. And if we follow that across the river, we can see the Pyeongsan Uranium Enrichment Plant.
Oh, wow, that's conveniently placed.
Yeah, so let's click on this. It looks like it doesn't have any reviews. If there are any North Koreans that do work at this plant, please make sure to leave a review. In fact, they have a corporate office. We could actually send them a letter to that address. I don't know if
I'm sure they take complaints kindly.
I'm sure they do. I am very sure they do. But this is where all of their enriched uranium is. And interestingly enough, because North Korea is so poor, and also no one allows them to get any kind of enriched uranium, they have to make it entirely in-house. And so what they do is they take massive amounts of coal, and you can see some of these coal piles out here in the middle of this nice pristine forest, and they're just making the ground absolutely toxic out there where it won't be able to grow anything again. They take this coal and they just burn massive amounts of it to get the uranium out of it, because in case if y'all don't know, coal is slightly radioactive, believe it or not, and there is uranium in almost all coal worldwide to varying degrees. And so they melt it, they melt the coal pretty much, they burn it, they get the uranium out of it, and then they enrich that into what we see in their nuclear weapons.
Definitely didn't know that.
Yeah, that is pretty much like the ghetto way of making enriched uranium, because there's a lot easier
like North Korea has the coal to spare to make uranium.
Oh yeah, they do. I mean, like, that's their biggest export is coal. Like, that's their whole country pretty much. It's just coal production. Because
Really?
that's like the main export they sell to the Chinese.
Huh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's really weird. North Korea is just a bizarre place, and if you look around North Korea, like, one thing I was watching today, they actually said that whenever there's purges in the Korean government, you can actually tell that from satellite footage, because the mansions that these guys lived in will be demolished.
Huh.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's really crazy. Anyways, getting off that little sideshow, we are now moving on to the next question.
All right, and up next we have a question from Justin Nourse, who says, if this war comes down to negotiations with the history of Russia's promises, how can Ukraine negotiate with a country that never holds a value to their word?
And can you reread that again real quick?
Yes, Justin says, if this war comes down to negotiations with the history of Russia's promises, how can Ukraine negotiate with a country that never holds a value to its word?
That is a pretty good question, really. If in terms of Afghanistan holding promises might be LOL, because the government that made the promise won't exist anymore, and so they just won't go back. That could be one way that this goes, but at the same time, you got a pretty good point. I mean, but then again, if we look at their precedent, they messed with Georgia once, they didn't do it again. and that's really the only example we have to work off with the Russian Federation. You know, with Chechnya, they went in twice. The first time they got beat, and they're like, okay, we're leaving that alone. And then the second time, they then went in there again, and you know they did whatever they won at the end, of course, with a massive amount of years putting in. Anyways, to go off of that, that's a great question, and I think the Ukrainians will just have to take their word on it. Otherwise, the war will go on forever, and that is not beneficial for either Ukraine or Russia. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, and thank you once again for a pretty good one.
And also, I see everybody talking about the Jake Bro fellow that was mentioned earlier. I'll have to check him out. I really haven't heard of the guy. I might have seen his name somewhere. It looks familiar with that spelling with an E at the end of it. But I'll have to look into it because I've never really heard of the guy. But anyways, on to our next question. We have one from Rebecca Knotts, who says, there has been an R satellite imaging of the bridge blown up, the boats being hit, the attaches in Russia. Why do they continue to guess which side fired on that location?
I'm not specifically sure why they keep guessing. It's something like I to be honest with you, I've never heard that anyone was guessing in the first place. So sadly, I'm gonna have to declare ignorance on that one because I've never heard of that situation before. But I do thank you for the question. It was a good one, but sadly, I don't think I can answer that one. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Jacob, who says, I have a question. How did Ukraine manage to get a drone into Sevastopol harbor without getting wrecked by a 20mm autocannon or similar?
Great question. Well, they just flew them. Believe it or not, Russian air defenses are not as great as they're made out to be. And so a smaller drone flying at a lower altitude can get incredibly far. It can get all the way to Sevastopol. What was more surprising to me was that those little suicide boats, the kamikaze boats, made it so far, because with the air, there is a way you can hide yourself. On the open sea, there's nowhere to hide, especially if you're a surface vessel. You just travel along the surface of the water, and if you have any kind of maritime radar, you usually just get picked up. As sonars, I believe, are for underwater. I believe surface ships use both sonars, microphones to pick up submarines, and then radars to pick up surface ships. But yeah, I mean, like, that honestly was more surprising to me than the air drones making it to Sevastopol, was that the kamikaze boats made it there and they weren't picked up or destroyed well beforehand. And so with that, I hope that addresses the question fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And also I see that everyone's saying the LSA is over on Jake Bro's channel as well. I'll have to look into it because everyone's saying a lot about him. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from White Lightning 777, who says, can that water-based drone attack ever be repeated, or is that a one-time dirty trick?
I believe it could be repeated. Most likely the Russians will be having a sharper eye out for kamikaze boats on their way to the harbor, and also kamikaze drones. But then again, if that happened already, and we have seen the Ukrainians pull off aerial drone attacks on Sevastopol before, it most likely will happen again. So I would certainly have to say, I would count on it happening a second time. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope that addresses the comment fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a question from D. Omand, who says, Enforcer, do you think Sweden will give their current generation Saab fighter plane, while they upgrade, good opportunity to show European-made fighter tech?
And I would have to say, I think they would, but the Swedish they don't get any orders for the Gripen. They've actually lost money on the Gripen as an entire airframe. And so I don't think they would be handing them out for free, because then that means that their development program is even worse off. So I think, honestly, that would be one of the last ones to, I guess you could say, make it to Ukraine. I would think almost any other aircraft would make it there before the Gripen, just due to how poorly their export market has been for that plane. Like the Swedish, along with a couple of other countries, make aircraft solely with the idea of exporting them, and no one really bought them, which is kind of sad. But with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Juan Ant, who says, Enforcer, should the UN demand from Putin a list of the names of all mobilized Russians to warn them individually that they could be complicit in all crimes in Ukraine.
Let's see. Can you reread that one more time? Because I'm looking at the live chat. There's a bunch of interesting stuff said there. So can you reread that again?
Juan Ant said, Enforcer, should the UN demand from Putin a list of the names of all mobilized Russians to warn them individually that they will be complicit in all crimes in Ukraine?
I don't think they should, because it would be just a waste of time. The Russians probably wouldn't give the list due to, I guess you could say, privacy reasons for their own soldiers. You know, that's most likely what they would claim it as. And also, it may not be a good thing to send that kind of message to Russian forces, because then they may be less reluctant to surrender, because then they'll be thinking, well, I'll be held accountable for war crimes that maybe that one specific soldier didn't even have anything to do with. So with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. You always want to make sure to give Russians a way out, and you don't want to tell them all that they're going to be treated like war criminals or treason or terrorists or anything like that, because then that may make them much less reluctant to surrender and take the easy way out. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And I believe we're going to take about 3 or 4 more from the chat, and then we're going to round out tonight's stream.
All right, and the next one is from Midwest Vikinger, who says, I'm 6'1". What's the height regulations to become a Ukrainian tanker?
I don't really know. Me being 6'2", which is 1 inch taller, tanks seem to be looking a little cramped, although they're massive. So I wouldn't know what the maximum height is for a tanker, but I feel like 5'11", if I just had to take a shot in the dark, would probably be the number. So max height for a tanker. Max height for... Is there a height limit for tank crew? Maximum height of 6 feet and 1 inches, it appears, for the U.S. military. So I don't know if it's the same for the Ukrainians. Their tanks are smaller. They are based off of T-72s and T-80s. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Super Action General, who says, how often do Ukrainian POWs actually return to frontline combat instead of deploying to a more quiet area of the front or being dismissed altogether?
And they're talking about Ukrainian soldiers?
Yeah, Ukrainian POWs.
I believe that Ukrainian POWs kind of have an option as to whether they want to return to service or not. I don't think it's something that's compulsory, and I don't think the Ukrainians are like, you know what, we're going to let you have a little bit of a break and put you on a quiet part of the front. I think it's something similar to the lines of, welcome back, we're glad to have you back, you can now retire into civilian life, you've done your service, but if you want to, you can rejoin and then go and fight on the front lines again. And I think they're given a choice, but we'll have to ask around and see if that is the case when we have Starsky around again sometime in the future. And so with that, we are on to the second to last one of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Nat, who says, what's the most common AK platform that you've seen used from both sides?
The AK-74 by far. The AK-74 has been the most used AK. It was also one of the most produced AKs in history. I believe the AKM made it beat it out, but this one is a close second, if any. And so, based off of that, we've seen that one the most. We have seen some AKMs largely used by Ukrainian police units. And so, just to answer that question, you know, just to shorten it down, because I'm going to say AK-74 a million times, it is the AK-74. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is Rebecca Knotts, once again, who says, why is there no admission of accidents by friendly fire or from the bombs they knocked out of the skies? Thank you if you answer.
And thank you for the question. Do you know which side they're talking about, Matthew? Ukrainians, Russians? Because it doesn't sound...
Let's see. I am not really sure. I was wondering if maybe her last super chat had some context, but I don't see it.
If you're talking about the... sadly, I don't know, because I can answer... I'll answer it both ways. With the Ukrainians, they have admitted to friendly fire before. Specifically in Kyiv, there was a lot of instances of friendly fire that happened in the opening days of the war in Kyiv, with the friendly units mistaking each other for being enemy units. So there was a decent amount of firefights that occurred there. There was also a decent amount of friendly fire incidents that occurred in other places on the front lines, but for a very short amount of time. Believe we saw one of those on film. And so the Ukrainians haven't really hidden that there has been friendly fire incidents. And let's see, to talk about the Russians, they usually don't talk about friendly fire at all because it makes their military look incompetent. And considering that they've had this entire image built up over decades that the Russian military is one of the most competent and best trained on Earth, it looks incredibly bad, especially considering that they have a lot of censorship to say something like the Russian military is committed in active friendly fire. That would come off probably poorly with the public, and so for that reason, they just go and overlook it most of the time. And so with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well. And believe it or not, everyone, but we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank everyone so much for watching. I thank everyone also for helping to keep this fundraiser alive and getting it up to $10,000. We once again blew through the goal by $2,500. If y'all did enjoy tonight's stream and appreciate what the Lee Spring Army has been able to do and you want to be a part of it, make sure to subscribe to this channel because right now we have 106,500 subscribers and the Lee Spring Army is only growing each and every day. Of course, if you do subscribe, you are always notified if you hit the bell button when these streams run, which is at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single day of the week, except for Mondays, which we take that day off. But tomorrow, we will be having at least one, maybe even two videos coming out on different topics. One will be a Halloween special video, if that one comes out, and the other one's going to be about a little bit of a espionage and spying kind of stuff. And so with that, I hope you all enjoy tomorrow. Stay safe. Thank you all once again for getting the fundraiser where it is. It's unbelievable to think we've done it again. And so with that, I will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the War of Ukraine on day 252. Thank you all so much once again. Have a great night. Take care. And Slava Ukraini. Yeehaw!
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу і тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що